Thank you for joining us as we discuss investing in education. Today, we're focusing on arguably the most important aspect of planning: how to estimate education costs and calculate realistic monthly contributions to achieve your investment goals. With tuition fees rising, understanding just how much to set aside is essential for ensuring you're prepared for your child's future. Once again, we are joined by Nicola Langridge, a financial advisor from Private Client Holdings. Nicola will guide us through practical examples and share useful tools to help parents plan effectively. Nicola, it's great to have you with us again.
Thank you.
Nicola, can you walk us through some practical examples of how parents can calculate the amount they need to save for their child's education? Let's say a family planning for private university costs in 10 years' time. How can they determine a realistic monthly contribution to achieve that goal?
So the best is to speak to an advisor. We have the right accurate tools to use that takes into account inflation and compounding and growth, etc. So I'll take you through a real life example. A year ago, I saw a couple. They've got two little boys. The one has 10 years to go until university and the other one has 12 years to go. And the parents have decided that they want to send the kids to a UK university. The dad has a UK passport and so do the kids. So it just seemed to be the obvious choice for them. But they had no idea what the cost would be. So what we started with is I spoke to a student in the UK to get some accurate figures in terms of living costs and boarding and food, because it's important to take all of these costs
I was
into
going to
account.
say, often we just think about tuition, but
Yes.
not really the additional costs.
So we looked at a 4-year course. We looked at the university and kind of a mid-level, decent university in the UK. And it all came to about 700,000 per year for the child to study. And when we looked at what the investment amount would need to be, they didn't have a particular asset that we could ring fence for it. So we were looking at contributing income. They would need to be contributing 240,000 per year per child. So that's 20,000 Rand per month per child towards this investment. And then we looked at where will they be studying. So they'll be studying in the UK. There's no point in having this investment locally. So we looked at contributing towards an offshore investment to hedge in that Rand volatility. And then also we have a nice long period. So we could look at high equity growth investments to make sure that they can achieve that amount that they need to achieve to be able to send the kids to university. So there's quite a lot of factors that need to be taken into account.
And if you're like me and you're considering an offshore university as an option for your children, what are the investment options available to me?
Okay, so there are two options. You can either be investing directly offshore or via a feeder fund, which is a type of unit trust. So if you're going directly offshore, you need to be applying for tax clearance and sending the funds offshore in a lump sum, because it becomes quite tricky to send funds on a monthly basis and incur forex each time. The minimums for investing directly offshore is also slightly higher. So on average, it's about $25,000 or 500,000 Rand to send a lump sum offshore into most of the investment houses because of their fee structures. So if you have a nice big lump sum to send over, then it makes sense to send it directly offshore. If you're looking at a monthly contribution, then using a feeder fund. So a feeder fund is a unit trust or unit trust portfolio on one of our local platforms. It's Rand denominated, but the underlying assets are offshore based. So you're getting full offshore exposure, but you're not having to actually send the funds offshore and incur those forex costs at that time. So it's just two different ways to approach it, but your advisor would be able to assist you with the correct option for your family.
University costs can vary significantly depending on the degree and the country, for example. With two young daughters, I often think about how much to budget for their future studies, but it's hard to know what to expect. Can you give us an idea of what some popular university degrees might cost and how parents can estimate these expenses when their children are ready for tertiary education?
I can. It obviously varies greatly according to country and course. I mean, you can be a short business course, so we can go all the way into engineering courses or medicine, then you're going to start looking at very different numbers. But if we look at the average 4-year business degree, and we're looking at this offshore option that I looked at last year, when we calculated it for the tertiary and including the boarding costs, it came to around 700,000 per child per year. And if you then break this down to how much you need to be investing, it works out to about 240,000 that you need to invest over the 10-year period per child. Breaking that down even further, 20,000 Rand per month. And as you can see, this does become quite expensive.
And is that 20,000 per child per month?
Per child per month. So if you have 2 kiddos, sending offshore is limited. Then apart from just the board and lodging, there's another cost to consider, and that's the application process. So for South Africa, it's straightforward. You're applying online, you're sending your marks through. But for example, a USA application, there's a lot more to it. There are exams to write, there's an essay that you have to prepare, there's interviews, there's so much choice in terms of university, a lot more than what we have. So then there are companies out there that help you through this process, and the cost of that company also needs to be thought of. One that we've looked at is Crimson. So Crimson will help with all the different preparations. There's kind of building blocks in terms of costs, so difficult to give you an exact cost of what that would be, but definitely in addition to what you need to be putting away just for tertiary. And then local universities are quite a bit cheaper. I always use UCT because it's the most expensive when I've looked at fees between the South African universities. And even there, it costs between 66,000 and 99,000 per year per child for just tuition. So that excludes books and laptops and all those things. For a residence with catering, it's currently at around 39,000 per year. So you're looking at about 137,000 per child per year. And if I bring that down to a monthly cost, it came out to be 3,375 if you're also looking over a 10-year period that you need to be looking at putting away.
At investing for that time.
Investing for that child, yes.
So no easy feat for parents. It's interesting how the cost for the local and international education can vary so dramatically. You mentioned services like Crimson for international applications. How early should parents apply? Do you have any additional insight into that application process?
So normally that conversation would start at about grade 10 in high school, because you need to be quite certain of where you want to go or what kind of course you're looking at. And addressing it earlier is pointless, and you're going to incur costs of having these consultations unnecessarily. But they really should start looking at it grade 10, grade 11. They need to start that interview and SAT prep. Leaving it to grade 12 is definitely a bit late.
Too late. There are several investment options out there for children's education. There's endowments, there's tax-free savings account, unit trusts. Please walk us through these, and please provide us with the key benefits and the features of each one of these investment products so we can make informed decisions about our financial future for our kids.
Okay, so the first one we do tend to look at is the tax-free savings account that you mentioned. So you can put away up to 500,000 in your lifetime towards a tax-free savings account. You're limited to putting 36,000 per year. So that would definitely be the first place to look. Because any of the proceeds, any of the interest, any of the capital gains are tax-free in these structures. So if you're looking at a longer-term project for investing for the kids, a longer-term goal, then obviously a tax-free savings makes sense because you're saving on that, on the tax side of things. Being very mindful of your family and how you approach money, though, because it's best to put these investments in the child's name. Because then you can allocate 36 to the one kid and 36 to the other kid. It's 3,000 Rand a month. But when that child hits 18, that investment is now theirs for them to do what they please. There's no control from your side anymore. So if you have a child that's not disciplined, or that might go on a spending spree, spending all of the money that you've put away from education, it might be problematic.
And it does happen.
And it does happen. Then the other product we can look at is endowments. I tend to say that endowments are better for bigger lump sums, and it's also for people earning at a tax bracket of over 30%. So endowments sets your income tax at 30% and your capital gains tax at 12%. So if you're at the highest tax bracket, then that's obviously quite a bit of saving. And they do also have estate planning benefits. So in terms of being able to set your kids or your spouse as the beneficiary and then receiving it within a month or two of something happening to you instead of it being stuck in the estate process. These have 5-year terms, so you should be invested in them for at least 5 years. And although they're quite good products to use and they have a lot of benefits, they can obviously also be costly. So it's very important to speak to your advisor to make sense around whether the benefits actually outweigh the costs. And then lastly, we have our plain unit trust. Unit trusts can be accessed either directly or via platform. They're quite cost effective, they're easy to use, and they give you access to various local and offshore investments and different kind of asset categories. So it's another great product to use. But as you can see, there's quite a lot of options. So it's quite important to speak to an advisor to determine which product is the best served towards you and your family and your goal.
I was going to say there's quite a few options to consider, especially for families who might have a significant lump sum and, of course, those who don't. Is it more advantageous to start with smaller monthly contributions in a unit trust or TFSA? And what should they be aware of in terms of liquidity or penalties if they need to access these funds a little bit earlier?
So determining how much to put away, as we've mentioned before, is going to be on that calculation.
Determined
If
by.
there's a longer period, those contributions are going to be smaller. Shorter period, they're going to be larger. But most of these investments are quite liquid. So a tax-free savings account is usually about 3 to 5 business days for most of the platforms to be able to access the money. Remembering that you don't want to access money in a short term if it's a tax-free savings account. The whole point is to have that tax saving because of growth or income over time. So if you know that you're going to be pulling the money out quickly or in a short period of time, then it's not the correct product
And the
to
magic
use.
of compound.
And the magic of compound.
Nicola, thank you so much for walking us through these calculations and offering your insights. It's clear that starting early and accounting for inflation are crucial when planning for education costs. Even small, consistent contributions can add up over time, so it's never too late or too early to start. One key takeaway for me from today's discussion is the importance of being realistic about what your child's education might cost in the future, especially with tuition fees rising each year. Having a concrete savings plan can take a lot of the guesswork out of the equation. Also, we know that there's no one-size-fits-all approach when you're investing for local university or private education or an offshore degree. The right investment vehicle depends on your financial circumstances, tax considerations, and your long-term goals.